Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another English lesson. Now, for those of you who haven't seen the video, you should watch it now, the previous one, the one before this, because this is all connected, this is all related. Like, this is an exact continuation of the video where I left that one off. So, I'll be continuing on with the same thoughts, with the same ideas, with the same information. So, if you haven't seen the previous video before watching this one, please go back and watch it. It'll help you understand as well what I'm talking about right now. Now, some of you might be wondering why I'm focusing on these things, why I'm not giving you like chapters according to English grammar, like, oh, let's focus on nouns, let's focus on pronouns. The reason is because like the things that I'm talking about right now, you can actually apply them in your daily life at the moment. These things that I'm talking about right now in this video are mistakes that I've noticed you guys make when you interact with me in class, when you write your homework assignments and everything else. So these are the issues that I've been noticing amongst you. That's why I'm talking about them. Now, these are some simple rules which, according to me, are simple, but it might not be simple for you, and it's all right, okay? Don't think that if you don't know this thing, don't know what I'm talking about, or don't follow along with the class, that you're somehow being left behind. You're not. I promise you, you won't be left behind. I'll make sure that each and every one of you has like a basic fundamental understanding of the English language by the time I'm done with you all. All right, so make sure you pay attention to anything. Make sure to bring up your queries, make sure to bring up your questions and everything else. Like I said, you can reach out to me on Discord, you can reach out to me on my phone, you can reach out to me via email. Like I said, I'm not that hard of a person to get a hold of, except for like when I'm busy with my other stuff as well. Like I said, 7 to 2, that's the time. So pay attention to that. So, like I said, I'll be putting stuff up on the screen. I'll be talking over it as I usually do for these videos. If you have any trouble reading what is on screen, let me know in the comments. I'll make sure from the next time I'll use even higher quality of screenshots, even higher quality of information on the screen. The problem with putting graphics on the screen is it takes too much time and it's too much effort for something that's not really much of a reward. Like I can put CGI graphics, but like, do you really want like CGI graphics on top of my face in a video that will take me like 8 hours to do and 9 hours to just finish, and then ends up being a 10-minute video? So nobody benefits from that, right? So make sure you're paying attention to what I'm talking about. Like I'll read whatever is on screen. Like I said, I make allowances for people who can't watch videos as well. This is one way to do it. Another way for people who can't watch the video to get my lessons is you can go to Google, type YouTube to MP3 and convert all my videos to MP3 and then download them, and you don't need like a lot of data to download MP3s. Like 26-minute lectures on an MP3 turns out to be like 13 MB or 14 MB, that's it. Whereas if you download a video, it'll come out to be like 350, 250, like depending on the quality, right? So for those of you who are having network issues, who live in places where like the connectivity is an issue, where YouTube doesn't really work properly, just download my videos as an MP3, because I talk through everything, right? And you can just listen to me talking, and I'll provide links and references as well, so you can just follow those links. If you're having any trouble doing online classes, just let me know. I'll figure some way out, an alternative way for me to get my lectures to you. I mean, there are plenty of ways on the internet. We just have to you just have to talk to me and I'll figure it out. So anyways, this is a long enough intro. Let's just get into the video, and I hope you guys pay attention and keep making notes. Bring up all any issues you might have during our online lectures, all right? Please maintain your notes properly. This is not to be, like I said, notes are not to be done in your fair notebook, but you need to be making notes wherever you can study them. You need to be making sure that your notes are absolutely perfect. You can give them to me if you want me to check them, if you want me to look over them, if you're doing it right or not, but just remember, those are not meant for your fair notebook. I won't be grading you or judging you based on your notes, all right? Notes are for your information only. All right, let's get into the video. Now, don't get scared just because it says tense on the screen, right? I have told you tenses are complicated, and I'll give you like an entire dedicated video, like probably a series of videos on tenses. But right now, we're just focusing on some of the simple, straightforward tenses that we use in our everyday speech and that we use while talking to each other or expressing ourselves, all right? That's why I'll be focusing on some of like the basics, the absolute basic tenses. I'm not going into third person singular, this, present, continuous, running, blah, 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 and all that complicated stuff. These are just simple stuff, all right? So pay attention, because this is one of the best ways for you to improve your spoken English as well. If you know these rules, if you know how to talk properly, if you know how to put your tenses properly, you will not sound like an idiot when you're speaking in English. Not that anybody sounds like an idiot, not calling anybody an idiot in my class. I'm just saying, yeah, you don't sound like an idiot if you have your tenses correct. So present simple positive. Use the present simple for things that happen regularly or things that are generally true. For example, I work, you work, we work, they work. And he works, she works, it works. So, for example, I work in a bank, he works at the university, we work every day, my sister works at the hospital. Like I said, everyday sentences, everyday usage, everyday conversations, we use this tense. So there are some special cases as well, which are given in the box, so pay attention. Special case number one, for verbs that end in consonant plus or minus y, we remove the y and add ies. All right. Now it says plus or minus y in your screen. It basically means y. All right. Ignore the plus part. They've misprinted it. The screenshot, like this book I'm using, is not very well typographed, or nobody actually did like the proofreading. Proofreading is when somebody goes through a book and checks all the mistakes before like it goes to publishing. So that's what proofreading means. And apparently somebody hasn't done their proofreading for this book. That's why we end up with consonant plus minus y. Like this looks like algebra when it should be looking like English. Anyways, for verbs that end in the consonant Y, we remove the Y and add IES. For example, study becomes studies, all right? I study English at school, Dana studies English at school. So IES turns it into studies. We do not say YS, studies is not written with a YS. Just remember, like it's crossed out. So other verbs this rule applies to includes verbs like cry, try, fly, carry. All right. I carry my books. Dana carries her books. He cries when he is sad. She cries when she is sad. All right. So cry turns into cries. Special case number two, for verbs that end in O, SH, S, double S, CH, X, we add ES. They go to English class on Wednesday. She goes to cooking class on Saturday. All right. Other verbs that include watch, kiss, teach, and fix. All right. So remember these rules, pay attention to these rules, and make a note of them in your notebook. Whenever you're having a conversation, whenever you're writing something, please keep these rules in mind. And if you have any issues, any questions, bring them up during the online lecture. Now, let's move on to present simple negative. Use the present simple negative for things that are not generally true. For example, I don't like, you don't like, we don't like, they don't like. He doesn't like, she doesn't like, or it doesn't like. Now, whenever it says negative, that means we're saying no to something or we're not agreeing with something. It doesn't mean we're negatively attacking somebody or we're making fun of somebody for negative reasons. It just means we're not agreeing with something. For certain, for the examples, we can look at I don't like coffee, John doesn't like pizza, John and David don't like milk, my mother doesn't like to travel. All right. So whenever you're giving information that is negative or that doesn't agree with something, or we are responding in a negative way, by negative I mean no or don't or doesn't, we'll use the present simple negative tense. All right. So some of the common errors, common mistakes that people make in the present simple negative, do not add s. Martha doesn't likes to dance. You don't have to say s there. Martha doesn't like to dance. Some other common errors are Pete no like bananas, Pete not like bananas. No, Pete doesn't like bananas. All right. Do not speak or write like a caveman. Like Pete no like bananas sounds like a caveman, right? So do not do that. Pete not like bananas is also basically caveman English. When I say caveman English, it means there's no grammar, there's no syntax, there's no language. It's just words put together. Yeah, sure, I can understand when you say Pete no like bananas. I understand that Pete does not like bananas, but you haven't expressed yourself in the proper way. The proper way to say it is Pete doesn't like bananas. All right, doesn't means does not. Like I said, contractions. Uh, Once we move on to like the proper grammar sections and everything else, I'll delve a little bit more into the technical side of contractions, why we actually use them. For now, you just have to know that contractions is whenever we shorten some word, like does not, we turn it into doesn't with an apostrophe. All right. Now, if you see on the screen, the apostrophe is after N. Now, this is basically the difference between American and English. In American English as well, British and American English. In British English, we'll put like the apostrophe after the S. So the apostrophe will be TOES apostrophe NT, but in American English, we'll put it after N. Both ways are correct. You can do both ways. Just remember, whenever you're doing an assignment in your professional life, once you move on in life, your company or whoever you're working for will tell you what English to use. They'll tell you the document should be formatted in British English or the document should be formatted in American English. So just pay attention to that. There are different rules in both languages, not that difficult anyways. Like some of the letters are removed and apostrophes are moved around, but pretty much everything else is just the same. The grammar is just the same. Now we'll be taking a look at questions in the present simple tense. Use present simple questions to ask things about that happen regularly or things that are generally true. Do I live in a city? Do you live in a city? Do we live in a city? Do they live in a city? Does he live in a city? Does she live in a city? Does it live in a city? For example, do you live in Brazil? Does Adam live in England? Do they live in a big house? Does she live near the beach? Just remember, whenever you're asking questions, make sure your questions are clear. Make sure you're putting forth the information that you want, all right? So for the example, do you live in Brazil? Now, I'm asking you a question about where you live, all right? So make sure whenever I'm asking a question, whenever I'm writing a question, the information that I want to receive from the person that I'm asking the question to has to be clear. They have to be able to answer my question properly. All right. So whenever you have to ask a question, make sure you formulate your thoughts properly. Make sure you have a clear idea of what information you want from the other person before you decide on what question to ask. Many people I've noticed whenever you're asking me questions is you just give me broken up pieces of information. You don't give me the entire information. For example, like if you want to understand something about a certain topic, you can't just say, "Sir, can you please explain this?" Now, I can explain, but you have to ask me what do you want me to explain about a certain topic. For example, if you are having trouble understanding present simple tense, and you can, if you think about asking me the question, "Sir, what does present simple tense mean?" Now, that question is asking you, what does present simple tense mean? That's not asking me anything else. Like, so that is what I will answer. So make sure whenever you're asking a question, when it's not just me, I'm using myself as an example right now, but it can be anything else, anybody you're interacting with. Make sure whenever you ask a question that you're ready for the answer you want to receive, right? That's the only reason why we ask questions, is to get information that we do not have. So if you have certain information, do not include it in the question, right? If you know something, you don't have to add it to the question. Now, some of the common errors that people make while asking questions are, do not use S. Okay? So somebody says, does she lives close to the beach? You don't have to say lives. You have to say live. All right? Just remember, you're using it in the simple tense. All right? So you will say live. Does she live close to the beach? Beach. Beach. All right? I said beach. Don't laugh. I said beach. Two. Don't forget do or does. Clara live in a big city? Does Clara live in a big city? Now, see, one more example of caveman English, which most people do, which most people use around us. Clara live in a big city. Now, I can understand this because I can get the intent behind the question. Like, he's trying to ask me, like, does Clara live in a big city? But he's put it the wrong way. Like, that's the wrong syntax. Like, the words are in the wrong order, and there's one thing missing. So just always forget that caveman English isn't supposed to be used, all right? Just forget caveman English. Just forget about it completely. Start focusing on proper English grammar. So, does Clara live in a big city? Does she live close to the beach? Do not make the common errors. And if you have any questions regarding this section that you didn't understand, you can bring them up. All right, so now we'll be taking a look at can, can't, must, mustn't, have to, don't have to. Why am I focusing on these? Because these are important parts of spoken English. These are important parts of written English as well. Once we move on to the next week, once we move on to more grammar lectures, we'll delve more into where they line up in the hierarchy of technical English terms. But for now, just use these as your spoken English rules or reference tools for whenever you're writing or whenever you're speaking or whenever you're doing anything regarded to English or expressing yourself in the English language. So, can means it's okay, cannot or must not, it's not okay. Just remember, whenever you're having trouble understanding contractions, try to break them up into like the larger forms. For example, can't is a contraction of cannot, mustn't is a contraction of must not, all right, don't is a contraction of do not. So whenever you're reading contractions and you're having trouble understanding what's written on the screen or what's written on the page or whatever you might be reading it from, just make sure to break it down into like its bigger form, so it'll be easier for you to read out the entire sentence in your head. And once you read out the entire sentence, it's much easier for you to infer the meaning or to understand the meaning. So can means it's okay, cannot, must not means it's not okay, have to, must means it's necessary or obligatory, doesn't have to or don't have to. It means it's not necessary or it's not obligatory. Basically, it means it is optional. Must or must not are more formal, all right? So must or must not are usually used whenever you're writing something which is supposed to be read in a formal manner, or which is supposed to be like a notice, or which is supposed to be like part of a report or an application or whatever. So there you can use must or must not. Otherwise you can use don't or doesn't. All right, don't or doesn't is informal. So there are some examples given on the street. You can ride your bike here. You can't smoke here. You mustn't smoke here. Now, if somebody asks me, can I smoke here? I'll say you can't smoke here. But if I was in a formal setting and somebody came up to my restaurant and asked me, can I smoke here? I'll say you must not smoke here. All right, because that's a formal way of speaking. You have to stop here. You must stop here. Have to means obligatory, must means absolutely necessary. So just remember, whatever words you're using, like when you say must, it means it's very clearly implied. Whenever somebody is using must when they're talking to you, it's very clearly implied that whatever they're asking you to do or not do is very important and you should listen to them. All right, it means it's a very important piece of information. It's very obligatory for you to do it. So we use must there. Now here it says you don't have to pay for the food. That means you do not have to pay for the food. It's very simple. All right. So just remember this simple rule. Like you can use must when it's formal, and for everything else, you can use like informally, like don't or doesn't. Everything else as informal. So just remember must, formal, mustn't, formal, and don't, informal, doesn't, informal. All right. Now, we'll be moving on to prepositions. Now, due to my previous experience as a teacher for people who were much older than you, people who were at a different stage in their academic careers, I've noticed that many people who do not come from an English background and people, especially people who do not read a lot or expose themselves to the English language, they have a lot of problem understanding how to use prepositions or where to use the appropriate prepositions, right? Many people confuse where you're supposed to use certain prepositions and they end up using the wrong ones and it doesn't make sense and they end up losing marks whenever they're writing an exam, and if they're talking to somebody they end up confusing the hell out of everybody else. So prepositions, the hint is in the name, positions, right? So they denote the position of an object in space or time whenever you're describing something. So prepositions are used to describe what an object is, where an object is located in a 3D space. All right, just remember, like we live in a three-dimensional space, right? There's three dimensions where we have to locate an object on. It can be up, it can be on, it can be below or under, or to the right or to the left, right? That's what three dimensions means. That means the object can be anywhere in those three dimensions, and that's why using prepositions in the correct manner and the correct form is important. Otherwise, your sentence just does not end up telling anybody what you want to tell them. Like if, for example, if I keep a coffee cup on the table and I tell somebody, oh, the coffee cup is under the table, they look under the table, but they won't find the coffee cup because it is on the table. So just remember that, like, position is very important whenever you're describing something to somebody. Spoken English, especially, it's very important because when you're writing, you can kind of get away with certain things, but when you're speaking, you can't really get away with a lot of things because people usually pick up on stuff. So pay attention to the screen. So when we use in, it is denoted for time or place. All right. So for time, we'll say in January, in October. For place, we'll say in Tokyo, in Japan. For seasons, we'll say in the summer, in the spring. For rooms or building, we'll say in the kitchen, in the supermarket. All right, now on your screen, there's an example given of in versus on. So the cat is in the box, the cat is on the table. Understand, when you say the cat is in the box, that means it is inside the box. When you say the cat is on the table, that means it is on top of the table. Just remember, in is used to denote something that is in something when you're using it to describe it that way. And when you say on, it means something is on top of something. So if I say my exams will be held in January, that means they will be held in the month of January. If I say my exams were held on January, doesn't make sense. How can my exams be held on top of January? Like January is not a thing that I can be on top of, right? So we'll say in January. It's same for the springs. The Olympics will be held in the summer. I can't say the Olympics will be held on the summer. There is no way for the Olympics to be placed on top of the summer. That's why I can say the Olympics will be held in the summer instead of saying on the summer. The gas is in the kitchen. The gas won't be on the kitchen. All right. In 2004, I'll say in 2004 this movie was released. I can't say on 2004 this movie was released. All right. Periods of the day: in the morning, in the evening. There is an exception: at night. Now we'll get into why there's an exception for night later, but for now just remember, whenever you're using in, you'll say in the morning, in the evening, in the afternoon, at night. All right. The reason why I'll explain to you later. Just don't get hung up on the why and ignore everything else. Just get all the information first, and then once you've completely understood all the other information, then we can move on to the why and the how and the when and everything else. But just first get all of this in your head. So we'll move on. On the night's time and date. So on Monday, on February 14th. Now here we says we can be on Monday. Why can we say on Monday? Because Monday is a specific day. So if I say my exam will be held on Monday, it doesn't mean it's being held on top of Monday. It's being held on Monday because it's a specific day. Now if I said my exam will be held on the weekend, I can't say on the weekend because I'm not specifying anything. But if I say my exam will be held over the weekend, it means it will be held over the weekend, which means it will be held from Friday all the way to Sunday. These are some little things that English, that's why I say English is a very complicated language sometimes, because there are certain confusing things. So don't get hung up on the why something is, please, students. Like I've noticed a lot of you just get hung up on like why is it a certain way. Now I understand curiosity and why asking why is very important, but there is a time and place for asking why. You can't just be asking why every time I say something, because it turns annoying. Why is this, sir? Because this is so. Why is that, sir? Then I explain something else, then you say why. Like the train of why never ends. All right. So do not get hung up on the train of why. Just focus on what I'm talking about. Just focus on what we're reading right now, and like the whys and everything else will be addressed on time. I promise you that. So on is used for time, and when you use the place, on the bus, on a bike, on the train, except in a car. Now, another exception, I'll say I'm traveling in a car, I'm traveling on the bus, I'm traveling on a bike, I'm on the train. Now, there are some issues here as well. Like you'll also be confused, like, oh, why are we using on for the bus, or why are we using on for a bike, except why are we using in for a car? You can be on a bike because it's very self-explanatory, because you're on top of a bike. For a train and a bus, the reason is because you're on something that you have no control over. It's basically like a bus and a train is basically a large house-like space, so we can use on because you're inside a large box. Now when we say I'm in a car, I'm in my car, it's because you're actually sitting inside a car. You're not actually on the car. All right, you're not on a taxi, you're in a car, you're in a taxi. Like I said, the more you read, the more you expose yourself to the language, the more these rules become clearer to you. Many times we don't have to even remember the rules. We just have to understand like what's the correct way of doing it, and we just have to do it that way. You don't really have to delve into the whys and everything else. Like I said, unless and until you're really absolutely sure that you want to follow English as a career, or you want like your technical English to be proficient, and you want to be like really technical about your grammar and everything else, do not focus too much on like the whys and this and that, because I will be talking about them once we move on. So anyways, at is used for times as well, at 6 o'clock, at 3:30, at noon. You use it as context for events like at school, at work, at a party. I'm at a party, I'm at work, there is an event at my school. All right. So this is just it. If you're having any trouble understanding this section, just make a note of it and talk to me on the Google lectures. All right. I'll address any whys you might have then, not right now.